Chapter 4 Narrative Control. There's no mistaking the fact that Celebration was an experiment for the Walt Disney Company. By founding the Disney Development Company, Eisner and management were testing to see if they could leverage the many real estate holdings of the company into short-term profits. And although Eisner, as he often did with projects under his leadership, did take interest in the creative aspects of Celebration from time to time, his attention was mostly elsewhere, on things like Euro Disney and Disney's America. For many of the residents, Celebration was a renewal for their families, a bright new chapter in their lives. But for Eisner and the company, it was a side project. And it was a side project that was proving more complicated than anticipated. Part of the reason is that the company didn't just choose to build homes and sell them off, but rather wanted to build an upscale community that could serve as a blueprint for future settlements. The company said as much a number of times to the press. Eisner was quoted as saying, "It will set up a system of how to develop communities. I hope in 50 years they say, thank God for Celebration." Likely they were hoping that these future settlements, which were inspired by Celebration, would also be owned by Disney. All criticisms aside though, the company was actually trying something, evident with how much effort they put into the design of the town. But they didn't just work hard on appearances. They were also working behind the scenes on maintaining control of the community so that its nice appearance would exemplify the perceived quality of the Disney brand. One of the reasons it became tricky to maintain control of Celebration was the fact that the company had to give up control at the very beginning of the project. What a lot of people may not know about the Walt Disney World Resort and all the company's holdings surrounding is that the large swath of land is enclosed within the Reedy Creek District. This is the company's own personal government system that allows them full legal control of their establishments within the region. They secured this control all the way back on May 12, 1967, but the process began all the way back in May 1959. Roy Disney Sr., Walt's brother, met with Florida government officials to pitch the company's plans, including Walt Disney World, and crucially, the original Epcot project. They showed the government the famed Epcot film, which showcased Walt detailing his plans for the ambitious project. When the officials heard of Walt's grand plans for a city of tomorrow, they allowed the company to establish the Reedy Creek District in order to realize that vision. What they didn't know was that the company wasn't planning to make Epcot. At least not for a while. Walt had died at the end of the previous year, and without the project's visionary leader driving it forward, there was very little reason for the company to take such a massive risk on such a risky project. And yet, they still pitched it, pretending they were moving forward on Epcot in order to gain control of their holdings within the Reedy Creek District. But when Celebration was being developed, the company faced a problem. If they were going to allow residents to live within the Reedy Creek District, those residents would gain voting rights on things that happened within the district. That means they could jeopardize any future theme park construction projects. The company already had and has similar issues with Disneyland in Anaheim, since they do not hold their own district in California around that resort. So, in order to prevent any loss of control on their theme parks, they had to de-annex Celebration from the Reedy Creek District. All of that to say, they no longer had full governmental control of Celebration when it was established. So, at least in the company's view, if they lost control in the start, they had to find ways to get control back. Celebration would always be a representation of their company, and they knew the media would be watching closely. So, they established control of the community in a few key ways. First, they established a homeowners association and 2 community development districts, with boards elected by landowners. Since Disney still owned most of the undeveloped land at this time, they were the majority voice in all 3 organizations. And through legal maneuvering, as long as the company owned just one piece of property, they retained veto power over any decision in Celebration. They also exerted power to maintain the appearance of the town, as stated previously, through the stipulations of the Celebration Pattern Book, as well as the additional rules laid out by the Homeowners Association. Some rules were fairly standard for neighborhoods of this type. Stipulations over garden and lawn appearances, as well as not being allowed to park a recreational vehicle on the street. Some expectations were very specific though, like how all visible windows must have white or neutral colored curtains, or that independent house sellers cannot put up a for sale sign. But who was enforcing these rules? Well, that brings us to the second method of control, the Celebration Company. The company was created by Disney and positioned as the unofficial government, the responsibilities of which included enforcement of HOA policies, Brent Harrington was hired as the town manager and would publish a monthly newsletter with town information, often including topics regarding company policy and town expectations. He was sort of the pseudo-mayor.
One of the things when I first interviewed with the Celebration Company, this was essentially a quote that was shared with me. They said, our goal was to take the proven planning principles from the past and combine them with the best thinking of today to create a community for tomorrow. And that resonated with me as, okay, I get that.
But hold on, you might be asking yourself, how is a company in charge of town government? That's because Celebration itself, notably, is not a democracy. When Disney de-annexed Celebration, it became an unincorporated area. It's actually not a city, or under the umbrella of Osceola County's government. So, by and large, the residents do not have voting rights in the town. To be sure, there were a lot of rules and stipulations in place for those living in Celebration. But for those outside of the community, rumors and misinformation made life in Disney's city out to be insanity. Tourists would find Celebration on park maps and drive down to see what all the fuss was about. When they arrived, they would ask residents about the various rumors and misinformation they had heard about the town. Some of these beliefs that tourists held about the community were ridiculous and kind of funny, so let's quickly go over a few of them. False rumors about the town, which people really believed, included that residents had a strict dress code, that there was a limit to how many children residents were allowed to have, that ownership of homes reverts to Disney after 30 years. Side note, this is actually a mix-up with the Disney Vacation Club, which sells timeshares. That actors were hired to walk dogs downtown to make it appear more homey. That potential buyers were interviewed, vetted, and approved by the Disney Company. That the animals around Celebration were audio animatronics like the ones found in the theme parks. And finally, that there was a nuclear reactor hidden just below the town. Although again, side note, Disney technically has the power to do so within their district, but opted to build a giant solar farm instead. And again, none of these are true. Tourists increasingly began to see the people living in Celebration less as normal people and more as an exhibit or spectacle similar to those they left behind in Disney World. They would drive through neighborhoods at crawling speeds, watching the people. Some would stand on their cars and peek into yards. And reportedly, one couple took their curiosity a step further, going into somebody's backyard and asking the residents for a tour of their house. There was actually a very common misconception that Celebration was the shooting location for the fictional town Sea Haven from The Truman Show. Funnily enough, that town was actually Seaside, Florida, another master planned community about 6 hours away. But the perception from the outside was clear. They saw Celebration as an extension of the theme parks. Pristine, but ultimately phony. They expected to find houses painted on wooden facades, not homes that families were really living in. It was a perception the news was definitely running with, and one that residents were growing tired of. But although the ongoing trend of negative press was more than anticipated, the tourism issue was expected and planned for by the Disney Development Company. Multiple plans for the town were shelved to help curb the amount of tourism. The Disney Institute, an adult-targeted educational program, was moved closer to Disney World and outside of Celebration. The massive shopping mall concept was scrapped as well. The company had Celebration on park maps, meaning tourism was directed to Celebration, and particularly to the shops on Market Street in the town center, but the goal was to reduce it. This was a tricky balance to maintain, and some decisions frustrated the residents. Many of the shops were selling things meant for the tourists, while residents wanted local shops that were more practical, like for example, a local hardware store. When I asked Rummell about tourism in Celebration, he had this to say.
We saw it as a problem. It was we didn't want a town that was overrun by transients, people. But on the other hand, there were people who moved into Celebration because they wanted to be either for the children or grandchildren. They wanted to be near Walt Disney World, and it's, people bought second homes and so on. But it was designed to be a place where people lived and spent 365 and not a tourist attraction. That may have been some of the reason why Disney Institute got taken out of it. Disney Institute became a bigger idea than it started with, and it was there may have been some concern that it would overrun Celebration.
Though the strict guidelines for homes and governmental structures were efficient methods for controlling the pristine appearance of the town, there was one more problem that Disney felt the need to solve: opinions and rumors. Celebration had a lot of rumors traveling through the community. One of the biggest ones was that Disney was planning to pull out of Celebration after facing so much negative press. The company certainly didn't help after they removed their name from the water tower at the front of the town. Previously, it had read Disney's Town of Celebration, but in the fall of 1997, an employee was instructed to paint Disney off the tower. However, Disney denied this rumor multiple times and tried its best to quell the controversy. But it's almost impossible to control people, their opinions, or what they say. Disney's dealings with people had usually fallen into two categories: employees and customers. It's fairly easy for Disney, like any company, to control their employees through things like dress codes, employee guidelines, and clear expectations. If someone steps out of line, you can have their employment terminated and replaced with someone that represents the brand better. With certain exceptions, Disney can easily control their employees. Customers are fairly easy to deal with as well. If someone likes your products, they will buy them. If someone likes your establishments, they will go to them. If they don't buy or they don't attend, someone else will. As long as your brand is never tarnished completely, if you're selling something people want, then people will buy. But suddenly, Disney had found themselves with long-term residents on property that they had marketed and sold. Some of the residents were Disney fanatics, while others could care less about the brand. But it didn't matter. All were tied to the brand. All of them had different opinions about the town, and all of them were talking about the town. And the media was listening. Disney knew they could not control these people's opinions about the town, or the rumors that circulated. So, how do you control a narrative? There was a final method used to control the narrative in and around Celebration. Rather than coming from Disney directly though, this last method was used by the Celebration Company themselves. It's a little bizarre, and I want to briefly cover it. So let's take a quick detour and talk about the third method used to control the narrative in Celebration: the Town Fathers. A quick detour: the Town Fathers. The Town Fathers was a group of 6 town leaders that secretly met to discuss emergencies and town controversies, talk about potential solutions, and unify their approach to handling these issues. The group was founded by Brent Harrington, the Celebration Company's town manager. The other 5 members were Pat Risley, pastor of the Community Presbyterian Church; Charlie Rogers, manager of the local bank; Kathy Johnson, leader of the Celebration Foundation, a local charity; Terry Wick, an education expert working with the Celebration School; and Dot Davis, the principal of the Celebration School at the time. The existence of this group and its goals was largely meant to be a secret, and most of the town seemingly did not know it existed. This makes sense, since internally, the town's main source of news was the monthly newsletter, which Brent Harrington and the Celebration Company put out. So if the Celebration Company didn't want people to know, it would be easy to leave residents in the dark. The goal was to unify the people in charge of the town's 5 cornerstones: education, technology, health, community, and place. Although health seemingly didn't have much representation, the other 4 were mostly covered. Now, it's unfair to say that this was a method Disney themselves used to control the narrative in Celebration. Any idea that they may have directed the Celebration Company to create the Town Fathers would be pure speculation. Very little is known about the group. I only found out about it in my research from Celebration U.S.A., as Doug Frantz and Catherine Collins discovered the group after seeing them meet together at the nearby golf club's restaurant. Other than that, seemingly nothing else has ever been reported about it, and unfortunately, I was never able to speak with anybody who was a part of it. It's also not unusual for a town leadership committee to exist, meet, and discuss town matters outside of the public eye. It's actually a good idea, because if one group is having trouble, the remaining 5 members can help direct their resources to best aid the town and its different components. What seems weird though is the fact that it was kept a secret. It's also worth noting that not everybody wanted it to be a secret. Kathy Johnson reportedly said she wished it was public. If part of the group's purpose was to identify and quell rumors before they got out of hand, it seems weird to keep the existence of the Town Fathers a secret, since that could become controversial itself. So, while the existence of the Town Fathers cannot directly be attributed to Disney, it may be fair to say that their purpose and goals align with those of the company. The Town Fathers mainly focused their attention on issues with the town's public school. Dot Davis was actually the school's 2nd principal. The first principal, Bobby Vogel, had only stayed as head of the school for a year, and that was hardly the only challenge the school faced. In only 2 years, the school had become the most controversial talking point between residents. with tensions rising so high that they threatened to destroy the town's newfound sense of community. So now, let's dive in and discuss the Celebration School.